Do you remember the first thing that I drew on the board? It was the forgetting curve. Whenever you learn something new, you learn it 100%, and over time, you forget. You relearn it, you forget slower, until eventually you master it. In this final video of the series, I want to teach you one of the most fundamental skills that you can use to make sure that you master anything to do with communication or sales. And this is the often dreaded role play. Running a role play is actually the best way to implement what you learn in sales. Sales is not like engineering or law where you can take a test and show the knowledge that you have. Sales is all about real-time usage. You actually have to use it in conversation. So the best way to practice that is through a role play. The reason most of us don't like role plays is that we feel judged, or it's uncomfortable, or we're not really sure what we should be focused on. Sometimes they're too long, or sometimes they're so short that it's not helpful. So here is the steps that you can take to implement role plays with anybody in your life, other colleagues or even friends or family at home. Say that you're practicing something. The first step is to realize what specific skill do you want to practice. Break it down into a really small chunk. Don't try and say, oh, I want to practice my opening call. And if it's a 5, 10, 15-minute call, there's a lot of little things to focus on. Tone, asking questions, listening, structure. There's a lot of things that go into it. So instead, break it down into a fundamental skill. Get really good at that, and then build on that skill over time. So once you've figured out what that skill is, for example, ACE, when we talked about how to open up a call, we can say this is the skill that we want to practice. We remind ourselves on what those 3 letters stand for: appreciate, check-in time, and goal. And now we're ready for part 2. This is the part where you need to think about a real-life scenario where you would use this skill. This is something fascinating as it relates to learning science. Make it real. Just like if you were to study for a test in the same room that you took it, you will do much better on that test. So keeping a real-life scenario is what is the last scheduled call that I've been on where I could use something like ACE. Or a meeting that you have, even with your family or friends. What is a meeting that you could say, well, I gathered us all here to accomplish this. That would be a great way to practice your ACE skill. Then, whoever's part of the role play, you need to make sure that you set the scene. Who is going to be doing what? One person's the customer, one person's the salesperson, and if you have a third person, they can be the coach, just making sure that you implemented that skill. And then finally, start. Make it very clear about who is doing what. Jill, you will be the sales professional. John, you will be the customer. John, I want you to pick up the phone and say, ring, ring, this is John, VP of Marketing. And Jill, from there, I want you to start off with just saying the word appreciate. I appreciate you getting on the phone. As soon as John picks up the phone, that's when you know this exercise is starting. Any questions? And saying it like that, asking for questions just before you start, should rid the tension in the room. Everybody's ready to get started. Then you give feedback, and the best way to give anybody feedback is by following 2 steps. First, did they accomplish the process? Did they say appreciate? Did they check the end time, ask a question? At the end, did they say the end goal? And then you focus on the execution. How is their tone? What would you change about their word choice? If you focus on process first, this takes away all of that uncomfort of giving feedback where it's emotional, like, oh, you sounded great, or that call didn't go so well. Instead, you just say, did you do this, this, this? Because if the process is broken, the execution doesn't matter. But after you've nailed the process, now the execution is how do you take it to the next level? How can you change your voice or change the quality of your question to strike a better conversation? So use this as a way to practice everything that you've learned and really master this skill over time.